Hi everyone. Just letting everyone in. There'll be a few stragglers that come in late, so I'll just wait a little bit to make sure everyone gets in before we get started completely. It's good to see so many of you joining in. We actually currently have 100 people in here, which is fantastic. So glad that you've all come to join me. Can I ask that as participants in the webinar, if you could keep your video and your microphone off, that would be fantastic. There is a chat feature in Zoom, which is what we're using. So if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see the chat function and you can click on there and you can see what's going on in the chat, which would be a good way for you to communicate with me. But if you're just joining in, please turn your video off. It'll just, with 100 people in here, it'll help to reduce the bandwidth on the internet for us all. I would really appreciate that. It's got a few more coming in at the moment. I hope you're all having a good break and enjoying some time off. All right, so we currently have 115 in here. Hopefully there won't be too many more to join us. I'm going to get started and we'll see how we go with everything we're doing. So thank you so much for joining me. If you don't know who I am, I'm Dan Jackson. I am the founder of PDHP.net if you're a PE teacher. If you're not a PE teacher, I'm also the founder of Teachers PD. Now, I've been teaching since 2006. My current role is Deputy Principal at Cedar College. And I also am currently a certified Google for Education trainer, a certified Google for Education innovator and educator, and all the things that you can get with Google. I basically have them. So today I'm going to be talking to you mostly about how to use these tools remotely. And I'm going to probably focus mostly on Classroom, to be honest, because that seemed to be what a lot of people have questions about, is specific things within Classroom. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about how you can really set up Classroom well for remote learning. I'm going to share with you a template that I recommend that you use with your students, and you can adapt it however you like to use with your students to make sure that they know what they're completing and that kind of stuff each day or each week. So I'm going to share those types of things with you. I want you to be able to, at the end of the webinar, I want you to basically know what you are doing with Google Classroom in terms of remote stuff. If you're looking for a webinar that was really just about how to use G Suite in general, I actually currently have a free course that's 12.5 hours worth of NESA accredited PD. And so if you would like that course, you can just go to, I'll post a link up here, but you just go to teacherspd.net. There's a link on that front page to register for the Introduction to G Suite course, and that will give you 12.5 hours worth of NESA accredited professional development relating to how to use all the G Suite tools and their basic functionalities. Now that course was written in general for how you might use G Suite in your classroom. This specifically today is really the bits that might be missing from that course in terms of how to really do this remotely. So I'm going to open up the chat. I see a few people jumping in here and saying hello. Thank you so much, guys, for jumping in and saying hello to everyone. I love this. I like that we're actually kind of building community through this as well. It's one of the reasons why I've chosen to use Zoom, because I can have you guys chat to me and we can talk as we go. And if I need to, you can even turn your videos on at some point. I just don't want everyone to have their videos on at the same time. This is currently being recorded. I've not paused it at all. Last time I did this last week, I paused it and then forgot to unpause it and I had to re-record everything. So today it is all being recorded. So you will get access to it later as well. So if you drop out or anything like that, you will still be able to watch the recording later. And yeah, hopefully that will be good for you. I'll just quickly chuck in to the chat box the link if you're looking to register for some free G Suite courses. I'll just chuck that into the chat now so that everyone can just click on that link and that will take you there. Meet these last few people that are coming in. Okay, so we're going to start. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get going with some practical learning here. So let's click share. And I'm going to share, well, I'm sharing my whole screen. That's what I want. Share. All right. And you'll shrink down the side. Okay. All right. So what we're doing here, this is currently Google Keep. That's not what I'm going to talk to you a lot about. This is just where I'm keeping notes of the links that I need to share with you. We're going to start by going into Classroom. And in Classroom, one of the things that you need to be able to do is just have a look at how to add teachers. I highly recommend, if you are using Google Classroom, particularly if you're using it remotely, I really recommend that you look to have more than one teacher in your classroom, and possibly even have one of those teachers in there as a student. That would be a fantastic thing for you to do with what is happening with your class. So to do that in your classroom, just go up here to people, click on there, and then you'll see here that you can add stuff. So if you want to add a teacher, you just click here, and you should be able to just type their name and their email address will come up. I'm going to just type Pam because I know if anyone comes up, I know who it will be. But hopefully that's good. So you just type in their email address and then click invite down the bottom right, and that will invite that person. So lots of them that she is, see Pam. So if I just click her, I can then invite her to become a teacher of my classroom. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to spam her with emails, but that's how you add a teacher here. If you want a teacher to be added as a student, you do the same thing. You just click here as a student and type in the teacher's email address, and it will then invite them to come and join your class as a student. And I actually have a whole classroom that's set up just for my teachers at the school, because my job is to provide their professional learning. And part of the way that I do that is through Google Classroom, where they might watch some videos and do some work and then submit back to me that they've completed that, so that I know that they've done the PD that I've asked them to do. So that's just a simple tip to get started with Google Classroom, is to make sure you have more than one person in there. It also will help when things go astray. So if, for example, you are too sick to run your class, you can easily have another teacher access it or share access with whoever needs to do it for that day. So even if you're just sharing it and adding your deputy principal, for example, or the person who organizes all your cover lessons in as a second teacher, that will be helpful for them, because it means that if you just say, look, I've left the work on Google Classroom for my class, they can then actually add the casual teacher into your classroom to have a look, to monitor what the students are doing, and they can go from there. So they actually get full access, and then you can remove that person later if you would like to. So that's tip number one for using G Suite remotely, is with Google Classroom, the first thing you want to make sure you're doing is adding an extra teacher into your class. Now, one of the reasons why I would encourage you to think about adding a teacher as a student, particularly for remote learning, is that when a student has issues in a classroom, you actually don't have the same view that they have. Yours is very similar in terms of what you can see and what you can't see, but it is not the same. And so what you actually want is to be able to jump on, and maybe you be the teacher student in a class, jump into that class that you are not necessarily teaching, but you can see the student view on, and just have a look at where you might need to navigate that student to, because they will lose, grades won't be at the top. They won't have the same kind of lists and stuff that are built in, but it is very similar. But it just gives you that extra help for when you need to troubleshoot with those students via distance. You can't just sit down next to them and say, hey, I want you to come and join, or I need you just to click here and there, and that's how you get access to it. Okay. The next thing is you should make sure in your classwork. So you'll notice in this classwork at the moment, this is just a blank test classroom, but you'll see here there's no topics, and normally your classroom will be full of topics, right? So you may have created a topic, so just click here, create a topic, and you'll have, it might be something like Shakespeare, whatever, it may even be spelled wrong for all I know. Shakespeare, spell like that. Click add. And so then you get your topic, and you can drag things and put them into topics like that. That's really helpful as you're organizing your lessons. But one thing that happens is if you've had a classroom for a while and you've got lots of different topics, these just tend to build up and build up and build up. Now, You can move the topics around by dragging them up and down. And so you might have a topic at the top that you particularly want as your students are looking at it. But one thing I recommend that you do as a teacher, particularly with remote stuff, is that you actually create a topic that is titled either today's work or this week's work. So if you're a primary school teacher, I highly recommend that it says today's work, so that you're just posting in there the work the student needs to do for that day, and they should be working through and ticking things off, and then they can submit that back to you. I'm going to share with you a bit of a template of a daily checklist that I would recommend that you use something like that when you're posting into your work for today. So let's create one. So create topic. I'm going to call this today's work. Now, if you're a high school teacher and you only see your class, maybe 3 times a week, you might call this, this week's work. And then you know that the students need to make sure they complete this work across the week. But for a primary school teacher, because you see your students so much more in terms of the classrooms that you use, you want to just do today's work so you're not overloading your students at once. Now, what I would recommend you post into your today's work each day, or if it's a high school teacher, your this week's work each week, is a document that looks a bit like this. So I'm just going to close this bit down on the side. Now, this is a daily checklist. And you can see I've just started off with a bit of a quote for all of us. Expectations are a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just something that kind of helps students to go, yeah, I need to actually make sure that what I'm doing with myself, if I'm motivated and I have some goals and I'm expecting myself to learn, I'm actually going to get through this and learn. Whereas if my goals are not like that, I'm going to suffer. But yeah, you can use any kind of inspiring type quotes, or you can remove it completely if you hate that kind of stuff. That's perfectly fine. The next thing I've got here is for them to basically just indicate to me what their energy levels are like today. And so they just go through, they could highlight it, go up here and just make that yellow. Okay, and you can see it's yellow now. So they're really energetic today. They're ready to go for their work. You might then, before you send this, I recommend you fill this in. Don't send it to them blank. But you want to tell them what the day is, what the learning goals are for the day. And if it's a high school, you might even have something in here where the students might add another one of their own learning goals for the day, just to allow them to have a bit of autonomy in what they're doing. And then we scroll down. So the next thing we want to do, so if you're primary school, then you're just going to put in the time here, because it's always going to be the same day you might have in the morning. What I want you to do is do your reading activities. So here's the link to the book that I want you to do, and you'll be asking them to read through the book. But it's not just reading the book. So you put the time, 9 o'clock, the activity, reading, and then in the to-do, you'll actually say, read the book, and here's a link to some questions about the book that I want you to answer. And so in the document, you actually put the links to all the other work. Now, that work might be just another Google document that they can view, but it also might be something that's in Google Classroom. And if it's in Google Classroom, I'm just going to jump back here for a second. So jump back over to Google Classroom. And when you're in Google Classroom, if you go to any of the posts that you have in your classwork or even in your stream, there's these 3 dots on the right. And if you click on those, you can actually copy the link. And so I'm going to copy the link to this. I'm going to go back to my daily thing. And so here I might say, complete this form, or it might be a quiz or something. And then Control K, or if you don't want to use Control K, you can highlight it up here. There's a link button, insert link, and paste the link, and it will take them to the post in Google Classroom for them to then go and explore and where they're going to do the form, or where they're going to submit their work, or if you've given them further instructions with a specific piece of work you want them to do, you can put that link there. But you're actually, each day, you're sending them to one document. And so they're just going to work through this one document all day. And as they go, you will ask them to change the highlighting or something like that to indicate what they've completed. And so if this says that it's 9 a.m. that you want them to start this activity, and they're doing reading, right? And so they're going to read the book, and then they're going to complete the form, right? So read chapter 2 and complete the form. Okay. And so you might also put the form over here in the resources. Okay. Or if it's the book, you might have, you know, a PDF of that chapter of the book if the students don't have it at home. And so you're putting this in like this for your students, and they're just going to work their way through. And as they complete it, they just highlight it. They go up here. Now they could use the actual background color, or they can just highlight the text. It won't matter either way, but you just want them to change it somehow. And so they might say, okay, that's yellow, I'm done, I've completed that. Okay. And so they're just going to work their way through. It just gives them that central spot. So they're not getting lost in, you know, there's 6 posts for today in Google Classroom of all the different work that they need to get done. And they're going to get lost in terms of what needs to get done when. Whereas if you just provide this document and make this document due at the end of the day, then as they go through, they're going to highlight it, show you that they've completed it, and you can watch them highlight it throughout the day. You can just go back to that post in the classroom, have a quick look at your whole class, and you'll see who's got bits highlighted, who doesn't have bits highlighted, and you can see that they're actually working their way through. So I'm going to just undo all the stuff I've just done, just so that when I give you the link, you'll actually get the blank form and not one that's filled in like this. Okay, last one, get rid of this highlighting. All right, so now I'm just going to share that link, and it's going to force you to make a copy. Okay, so here is the link, copy, and I just need to probably, here we go, that's my participants. I need to find the chat function, which requires me, I think, to just stop sharing for a second, and then I can easily get in here. All right, so paste. There is the document for you to just make a copy. So it'll, when it pops up, it'll say make a copy of, and whatever the title of it is, something checklist. And you can make your own copy of that to use in your classroom or to adjust however you like for your students as they're going through with everything that's going on. So that's highly recommended. I'll just have a quick look through here of the questions anyone's got and make sure that I'm answering things as people may or may not have gotten lost there. Thanks, Meninda, for your feedback on my courses. That's great. Hi from everyone. All right, working now, great. Create a new Google Classroom. It's called an online classroom, EG20. Yep, that's great. That's a good idea. I like the idea of creating your own classroom just for the remote time, because it might be different and it'll have different kinds of assignments related to what you were doing previously if you were already using Google Classroom. That's a great idea, Ingrid. Keeping scrolling down. Hi, everyone. All right, beautiful. So make a copy. So yeah, so I would, Brad, who says here, would I share this and make a copy for each student? Yes, I would. So if I quickly, I'm going to go back to the document and I'm going to show you how to make sure you create a copy for each of your students, because I actually have had a few people ask questions about this as they've gone through. But if I go over here, I'm going to go to this, let's make just a transcript task. I'll walk through a few things here before I show you how to make sure you're making a copy for each student. But because I've already actually got this transcript task open over here, because what I wanted to show you here is that when you post a transcript task, so here's your section here, when it's a Google document, and you can only do this, this is the spot where people get stuck, is you can only create this setting to make a copy for each student the first time that you make this post. So as soon as you've posted it, you can't come back and change this setting here to make a copy. You will be able to change it from students can edit to students can view, but you won't be able to select this one again. So you've got to do it the first time that you post an assignment to make a copy for each student. And so I would, as I'm creating something for my students and I'm posting stuff up, if I want the students to submit it back to me, they need to have their own copy. And if you want students to be working collaboratively as a whole class on a document, then they can just edit that one file. But if you're asking, you know, with remote learning, it's pretty much all going to be individual. You want to make sure that you send a copy for each student so that they're not getting stuck. You know, if they highlight something in that daily checklist document, and then another student jumps on that document, they're like, well, I didn't finish that, and so they might unhighlight it, and it just becomes a big mess for you. So make a copy for each student. Now, you'll also see, make sure you give it a clear name. Now, this is not an assessment task. In my course, I tell people that if it is an assessment task, to actually write that it's an assessment task. Now, there's 2 reasons why I do that. One is because parents at home, if you're using Guardian summaries in Google Classroom, they will get an email for everything that's marked as an assignment which basically is anything that the students can submit back to you. And so it'll come up and it'll say, you know, the assignment wasn't completed, but it may have just been classwork that you wanted the students to hand back to you that they haven't quite had a chance to finish. And it may be your whole class hasn't finished it because you didn't get through it all that day. And so there's a little bit more to do tomorrow before that they submit it. But if that happens to be a Friday and they have to do it on Monday, parents will get an email that says this assignment wasn't submitted, it's overdue, and it will look like it's an assignment. And so I make sure that I put assessment task at the front so that any parents will know this one's an assessment task and these ones are classwork, and I might even label them. If it's not an assessment task, I might even write it as a class task. To just make sure it's really clear for parents and also clear for students that they know which ones are real assignments and which ones are just classwork. Now, the other thing that you'll note is that Google recently have started to include rubrics. And so if you click down here, you might, you know, if I delete this one, it'll say that you can create a rubric or you can import one from Google Sheets, etc. I've started to create one already for this task. So I click here. And so this is just a very basic task that I actually made up for kids. So it's just transcripts or half done transcripts for podcasts. And so I want them to transfer that half done podcast. That's just a bunch of notes. I want them to actually go through and create that as a proper persuasive argument. That's the second one. The first one, it's already written. I just want them to do some spell checking and grammatical errors. And then the bottom one, it's already done, and I want them to actually record their voice, and then they're going to submit all that back to me in Classroom. But here I've just created a really easy rubric. And so in the rubric, you can, yeah, this one's done. I should be able to edit this, but it looks like it's going to be cranky on me. Here we go, edit. All right, so when I edit it, you'll just see I can just add another one. You can insert your points, so you can say that it's out of 4 or 3 or 2. So each one then gets a level or title and a description. If you don't want to do scoring, if you don't want to add points to it, you just go over here and you switch the scoring off at the top, and then you don't have to put in this required points, but at the moment it says it's required. Now that's how it is, simply add, and you can add more and more and more. Okay, but if you don't, whoops, just deleted the wrong level. That's okay. Delete this one too. Okay, so I've got my 1 to 3 still there, and you scroll down. If you want more at the bottom, just keep scrolling down, and you'll see here that it says add criteria. And so if I click add, it then pops up with a new one. I'll call it whatever I want. So test 2, provide a description about what this rubric section is about. And then you could even do it for a question. You know, you could just say this is question 2 in the actual assignment. And then you'll put in here the criteria that you're going to use, and it could have, you know, lots of different levels here for when you're marking this. And I really like this because it will automatically add all this up and stick it into your Google Mark book in Classroom, which is fantastic. Now again, I don't want this level, so 3 dots on the right, click there and delete this criteria. Now you could also, you saw there, duplicate it as well. If you're going to use the same kind of system and the same number of points, you might want to just duplicate it and then just edit the bits within there. So once that's all done, it looks like I haven't changed anything. That's why I can't save it. So exit, and so my rubric's there. I make a copy for each student. And then up here, the other thing I really like is that I can assign it, or I can click down, I can schedule it, I can make it a draft, or I can discard it. Now, with remote learning, the other thing I really want to encourage you to do is to make sure, you'll see here, that it always has a due date. Because by adding the due date, so if it's due tomorrow, I can make it due today. Okay, let's make it due today at 5 o'clock. Oops, not 500. Okay, so it's due at 5 p.m. today. Currently it has no topic. I can put it into today's work. This is a new feature coming into Google Classroom, which is about originality reports. So, you know, that kind of turn it in type thing where it'll check for plagiarism and all that kind of stuff. I'll then just click assign. Okay, so there it is listed under today's work. Now, what I'm going to quickly do now is jump over to a student view for you. So this is my student view. Let's go to test. So you'll see now that my student on the left here has upcoming due 5 o'clock today. And that's why I want to use due dates and times, is that I can actually say to my students that they should have a look at this little box on the left every day. So not only will they be able to go here to my classwork, and they'll see that they should see that there's 2, there we go. So they'll see this transcript task, they can click into that and complete it. They can also view their work. So if they click here, it'll just go straight to the stuff that they have specifically that's theirs, assigned, whether they've returned it with a grade. And that's something that you don't see as a teacher. You don't get to see that section of the student's profile. But I like the fact that when they're on the stream, they have this upcoming due stuff. And that's what we have as well. And so we can check in here too if there's due dates that have been assigned to things. So please make sure you use due dates. Do use the template that I shared with you as well, so that you can see exactly how you can lay things out to make it as easy as possible for your students to know what they should do when. Because I've heard through discussions and on Facebook and stuff, a lot of teachers are finding that their students are getting lost. They don't know what they're meant to be doing each day. And by using a system like this, and you could use a spreadsheet if you wanted to, you could use anything, it just really helps your students to know exactly what they should be doing each day. Okay, now I'm going to jump back over and stop sharing and have a look at any comments. Originating reports will check for plagiarism. Yep, that's right. So that's coming in. So some of you might be able to see that. Some of you may not yet, because I think at the moment it's in a beta test mode, but it's coming soon, definitely for those of you who are keen for that. And I know a lot of teachers are keen for that. So you can now check for plagiarism, and that is fantastic. I can see lots of people like that. Okay. Okay, where did I go to create a rubric? All right, let me jump back in there and I'll show you very quickly. So share my screen again and make sure I'm using the teacher's view. All right, so when I just create any kind of assignment, you'll see down here, it says rubric. Now, your school needs to have turned this on and you need to have a document attached to it. So let me just get anything out of my documents. So we just played around with that. Let's click add that. Okay, make a copy for each student. It's worth 100 points. Due whenever. Okay, give it a title. Today's work. Click down. Now, this should be loading. There it is. All right. So now that it's got a title, I can add my rubric. So you click here. You can create a rubric. You can reuse an old one. Or if you've already got a rubric that's been created in a Google Sheet, you can import it straight away. And so you just click create rubric and it takes you to the rubric section. So turn off scoring if you don't want to use it. Okay, and so now you just have criteria instead that's required, and that's your title. And so you're just going to go through and add these in, click plus, and you're creating your rubric in Google Classroom, which is really, it's a new feature that they've added, they probably added about 6 months ago. And so I'd highly recommend that you start using that, because I think it's going to be really good as we move forward with Google Classroom. All right, I'm just going to discard that. All right. Next thing that you need to do in Classroom as you're doing remote learning. Now, one thing, if you've just joined up as a teacher to multiple classrooms, the first thing you want to do is make sure that you manage your notification settings. Now, to find these, you go to your 3 bars on the left, scroll down to where it says settings, click there, and then you'll see you got your notification settings here. So here I'm going to receive email notifications, which you probably want to leave on. I like getting email notifications. And then you just need to decide what you want those notifications for. Do you want them for every time someone comments on a post you put up, or every time someone mentions you? Because you can actually, when you're making comments and stuff, you can mention people by tagging them. And I'm going to show you how to tag in a minute. Private comments, you might also want to have coming back to you and being notified about. I don't know about late submissions, resubmissions and stuff. You probably will see those anyway. And then scheduled or failed posts, you might want to know, particularly if they failed. That's probably the main thing. I wish they'd separate them so that if I don't want to know if it published and worked, I do want to know if it failed. Now, As someone who might have lots of classrooms though, the bit you want to turn on and off is this last bit where it says class notifications. So you click the drop down box. Now, I don't have a lot of classes because this is just a test Google account where there's not many here. If I switch back over though to my school one and I go here and go to my settings in this one, and I scroll down here and click that, you'll see I have, that's the wrong account. Let's try this one. There we go. This is my right account. Scroll down, you see how many, I've got lots and lots and lots of classrooms listed there. I don't want notifications for any of those except for my staff one. The rest of them are actually other teachers' classrooms, and I have access to it so that I can jump in there and have a look. If I want to cover someone's class, I know that I can access their classroom and stuff. So I have lots of them, but I only get notifications for the ones I'm actually the main teacher on. And so you can easily change these settings to whatever you like, and I highly recommend you do. If you're in lots and lots of classrooms, you'll end up just filling your email with spam from all the stuff that people are posting, particularly if you're across 20 or 30 classrooms, you'll end up getting a lot of emails coming your way from kids who have resubmitted stuff, who have made comments, where things are late, etc. Now, jumping back over here and talking about settings, let's jump back into our test class. Now, the other setting that you need to make sure you think about as we're working remotely is whether or not you want students to be able to post into your stream, or whether you only want them to be able to comment on posts that you've already made. So to do that, up here in the top right hand corner, go to settings. And so you can see your class names and that kind of stuff, and you can change this around however you like. You can make the room online, for example. And you scroll down, this is where you get your code for joining the classroom. And so you can click that code if you like, and it will display for you if you're joining a whole class at once. That's a really easy way to get kids to just enter the code to join. Now, this is the bit, so where it says stream, I have students can post and comment, and that's kind of by default. If you then select the down drop, you want students can only comment. That's the one I recommend generally, is because otherwise students will start posting anything they like, and it can really jam up that stream quite quickly, particularly if you have a very active class in there. Whereas if you only allow them to comment, it really helps to keep things related to the teaching and learning that's happening, and that's really important. Okay, so that's what I recommend. In terms of the stream, so that's that bit that's right at the front. So there's a class stream. So stream is this one, where anything that gets posted and kids can just click on it and chat back to each other. Then there's classwork. Anything that gets posted into classwork will generally get put into stream unless you change the settings. So in your settings, it says here classwork on stream. So you can show a condensed notification, which is what I currently have. You can show attachments if you like, so that'll bring up any documents or videos that are linked as well. So it'll have the title and then all those linked documents that they can easily click on. Or you can hide your classwork from that stream so that it doesn't block it up. So if you're finding that you're actually posting a lot of classwork and you're using the stream for chat functions with your students, I would recommend you actually turn off and click hide notifications so that only the chat is happening in the stream and your classwork is kept separately. But if you're not doing a lot of classwork posts, then maybe you want to keep it with just a condensed notifications in there. Now, this is also where you turn your Guardian summaries on or off, which is that email that gets automatically sent to parents and notifies them if students have not submitted work. It'll tell them what work students have done that week, and it's a good way to keep parents in the know when it comes to your classroom. Finally, this thing actually just came out very recently. Google Meet is now available from within Classroom. And so you can generate a Meet link, for example, that is then on your classroom. And so you don't have to keep posting a new Meet link for your students to get into an online meeting space where you can have video chat or share screens and those types of things. You can actually just have the same one on all the time. And you can make it visible or not visible to students, but just if it's there, then you click save, then the students will be able to access Meet. And I think that's a great thing, particularly at the moment as we're using things remotely. Now the Google Meet link is just there for students. They can see it and they can access it and click on it when you need to have them click on it. It's also, so you see, this is where it comes up just at the top. underneath, so it's got your test, your class code, and then the Meet link. And so that's where students will see it. And so you just click on that and it will launch Google Meet for your class, and all of your class can just go there and click there, and they'll have the same link all the time where they can easily get in and access you and have a chat with you. So I think that's great that they've finally added that into Classroom, particularly, you know that they've done that right now in response to COVID-19 and all this remote and online learning that's been happening. So sorry about that. So that's a quick rundown on a whole bunch of just tips about how to really make your classroom more functional for your students. And I really like, this checklist thing for your students, particularly for your younger students, to just help them know exactly what they need to complete as they're working through their day. Now, if you have students who are new to using Google Classroom, and Google Classroom at the moment is new to a lot of teachers, let alone the students. And so with this remote aspect that's happened, one of the things I want to encourage you to do for your students is to make yourself a student of someone's class. And then I want you to make a screencast for them. Now, a screencast can be done using lots of different tools. Okay, so if you've paid for something like Camtasia, that'll do it. If you are using a Mac, you can use, I think it's QuickTime, that'll do a screen recording on your Mac. Or you can use extensions in Chrome. So if you look right up here on the right, these are my extensions that I can see. This one here is called Screencastify. And so when you click on Screencastify, if you're logged in and all the rest of it, I don't know if I am, I'm not, but you just sign in, and then using Screencastify, you can actually video your entire screen. So let's just jump in here and I'll quickly log in and I'll show you what it looks like, because I really think that it's great for people to use this. Okay, now hopefully it signed me in and it's all working properly. Click this button. It asks me to sign in again. Okay, so you'll see it gives you some options. So because I haven't upgraded, I've used my business email, whereas if I use my school email, I will actually signed up with my school email to have unlimited time. But a 5-minute video is probably enough, to be honest. Turn on your microphone. You can embed a webcam if you want to. You don't have to. You can choose just a browser tab, so it'll just actually video record the Chrome browser, or you could choose to video your whole desktop. So if you want to show them maybe a Word document as well, you could use Screencastify to do that. And even I love Screencastify because it allows you to make a very quick video that you can then post straight into your classroom with the document to provide that extra bit of explanation for that document. So we write out text that goes into our posts, and then we put in the document, but we still have students that kind of get lost. So if you record yourself going through that document and explaining exactly what the students need to do, it doesn't take long, because it doesn't have to be clean. It doesn't have to not have mistakes in it, which is that's perfectly fine. In reality, in your classroom, we make mistakes. We say the same thing 6 times. So don't worry about it in your videos either when you're sharing it. Just click the record, take 5 minutes to go through the document you're going to send your students, or if they're new to Google Classroom, have someone sit down and actually make a screencast of what it looks like for a student and where they go to find their work, where they go to chat directly to the teacher, if they want it to be a public chat, where to talk, or maybe they want to send a private message to you, and they can do that in Google Classroom as well. So just show them how to use it, as well as getting your own training like you are at the moment. Really great thing to be doing. All right, I'm not going to click record because all it'll do is interfere with Zoom, because everything's using video and screencasting. So let's keep that going. So that's really, really beneficial. I'm going to stop sharing again and jump back into our chat. Oops. Oh, no, that's fine. Hang on. Click close. Thought for a second then that I wasn't sharing. Ooh. All right. Yeah, Loom, that's great. So yeah, finding things that are really good to record. Screencastify is free, only for another month. So Screencastify, yeah, that's the full version, free for teachers. You will always be able to do free 5-minute videos, no matter what. So in terms of screencasting, yes, schools generally don't have a problem with you videoing a screen, because it's saved, particularly if you use Screencastify, it saves directly into your Google Drive. which is all, all that same kind of protection. And it's just you talking about the work that you're sharing with your students. The issue that schools have with screencasting is when you're screencasting and people's names are on it or people's faces are on it, and you're having, it's essentially the same issues we have at school when we're trying to do videos and take photos of our kids in class. You'll have those same issues with what's going on in your virtual class if you want to record those types of things. So if you have Screencastify, Camtasia, Brad, that is fantastic. So it is really, Camtasia, I think, is by far the best software around for screencasting and making videos for students. It is what I use for all of my videos that I make, and I think it's fantastic. So really good. So glad to see lots of comments going in there, just making sure I haven't missed any questions. Yeah, you can definitely, Ingrid, that's a good point there where you've said that you can turn off the link after class so that the students don't keep jumping in and chatting when you're gone. But do know you can set features on that with your meets anyway to not allow students to see it. So you could do that as well. So yes, they can. So Amy, if they can just click on it and chat to each other, which depending on your age and what your kids are like, can be a good or a bad thing. If students need help at some point and they click there and they find another student that's in there and they have a chat about the work, that's fantastic. But if they're not chatting about the work, you might want to switch that off. And yes, you can use you can use Google Meet instead of Zoom. So you definitely can. Just depends on your department and what and your school and what policies they've decided in regards to Google Meets, Zoom, or Microsoft Teams, for example. They generally will tell you which one you should be using. I know at my school, a lot of our teachers are using Hangouts, which is essentially like Meet and is a Google thing, but Hangouts is being taken away from Google in July. They're discontinuing that, and Meet is taking over instead. So Meet is the Google version of video and having meetings. Zoom is an external thing. Zoom generally is more reliable in terms of its speed and how much it drains your internet, particularly. Zoom is really good at that and doesn't tend to crash as much. Meet's still very reliable. You can record Meet at the moment. That Google have allowed that for teachers as well. So if you want, you can jump into a Meet by yourself, share your screen and record it. And that's an easy way as well to make a quick screen recording or a screencast to go with an assignment. Yeah, so a place where all notifications, in Classroom, Naomi, all your notifications would generally be listed in your work section. So for a teacher, so if I share and go back to a classroom, as a teacher, if I want to see the notifications and stuff that are coming through, I click here to view all. And so this is the work that's coming up and that's due. You're not necessarily going to see all the different notifications in terms of the comments from students, if that's what you mean. But in terms of the stuff that's coming up that's due and what's been submitted and stuff, that'll be there. Otherwise, yeah, you're really looking at going into the posts where they're going to be existing. And so that's part of why having your email notifications on is good. One thing that will happen, if you use the app will give you notifications as well, and the app works differently. So you will be able to access notifications inside your app afterwards, but not so much from a PC perspective, which is probably, that's a downside, I guess, at this point. Hopefully they'll think about that and provide feedback. And if you do, look, if you have stuff that you want Google Classroom to add to it, one thing that Google always tell me to tell people is to click this button down the bottom that says this little question mark button. If you click that, you can actually report issue or request a feature. And so when you click on that, it'll take a screen photo of whatever it is that you're going to ask them to fix or things you want them to add. And so if you click that and provide them with that feedback, they do read it all the time. So they guarantee me they read every single one of those feature requests or sent through that system, and they do action them. So that is why we now have rubrics. It's why we now have mark books up here in our grades, because this, with the first lot of Classroom, you couldn't even you didn't have a mark book yet. And so they're really adding more and more features all the time, and pretty much every kind of August, I think, they do this big launch of new stuff, and it's basically because as just before American schools go back, they do a big launch around all the new updates that they've made into Google. So Google Classroom, they'll update everything all over the place if they've got updates to share, and that's when it will happen. So that's what you're after in that section. Okay. Next, I want to show you how to tag students in a document. Now, this is something that I think is fantastic. Now, you can, from what I understand here, if I click on this, whoop, that's not the right spot. Let me get out of that. I just want the actual post. Let's go to instructions. All right, so with the comments here, so class comments, if I have someone in my class, I should be able to write @ there we go. So you'll see how the person comes up here. If I click on that, it's actually a tag. And so that means the person will get an email when I actually click this post to tag. And that's in comments. So you can tag people in comments if you're specifically replying to a person who asked a question, but if it's 3 questions ago, you can tag them. But you can also do that in a document. So here in this document, right, that you have just gone through and made copies of, etc., you can tag students in this document. So for example, let's say I have my student, they've been working through a workbook or some kind of booklet that I've given them that they're meant to be working through for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and they're not going to submit it for a while, but I do want to give them feedback regularly, right? So I might jump into this document every lesson or maybe every couple of lessons to have a look at where my students are at. And you can, even if it's a group access, so if there's 5 kids accessing this document, or if all the students in the class can access this document, you can still highlight the text, okay, and then you want to comment. So normally there's a comment feature that pops out on the right, but not when you're in a table. You can click here, comment. You can click comment at the top there as well. So click comment, and now there's a couple of things. I could just start writing the person's name. So if I start writing Pam again, because she's in my contacts, she comes up, and so I could click on her that way. If that's not coming up for you, you could also try @, and that will give you a drop-down list of people who you might be emailing or who are in your email account, in your contacts list. And once you've done it, so if I go back to Pam, who has a capital, so Pam, I then get this, I can just write here anything that I want for her, right? So you need to revise this section of your essay. It doesn't flow well, okay? And so that gives them a bit of more direction. But you might say that, and so because I've mentioned them, because they've got this plus there, it will add people to the discussion and send an email. So they're going to get an email with that comment that you've given them. Now, if I have multiple students who can access this document and I tag Pam and then another kid comes in and just marks it as complete, right? That could be a problem. And so what they've done to fix that is I can assign this to Pam. So if I click that, it then says that the assigned person will be notified and responsible for marking as done. So that means that only me or Pam can tick the marked as done button. No other student could, and no other teacher could. Okay, so if once that comment's there, only the person who made the comment or the person who gets notified and who's been assigned to that comment gets that email. Now, I'm going to say I use this a lot, particularly in our staff meetings at our school. So when we do our staff meetings and we're all taking our notes, whoever's taking the notes will tag people according to the actions that need to be done in those meeting notes. So as they go through, they'll highlight a section and say, this section, Dan's going to be working on this, highlight it. They're going to put Dan J at Cedar College, whatever, and then they'll put a little comment in there about how I need to action that. I'll then get an email that has the bit that's been highlighted and the comment that's been made on it for me to action. And once I action it, I'll then jump back in there and mark it as done. And so it's an excellent way just to give that extra follow-up on documents and stuff as students are working on them, particularly if they're working remotely at the moment. So again, I don't want to spam Pam here, so I'm going to click cancel. So that's tagging, and I use tagging all the time. I use it in as many places as I can, and I think it's one of the most useful tools within G Suite particularly when you're looking at remote learning and helping students when you're not right next to them. So you can't necessarily, we used to just go to the student, squat down next to them, have a look at what they're working on, give them a few comments verbally for them to then action. Whereas remotely, rather than having to get a video call with them all the time, I can just jump into their document, I can highlight something, leave them a comment and tag them in it, and they'll get an email that says you've been tagged, and they'll go, oh, okay, the teacher's been looking at my stuff, and they'll jump in and have a look at what you needed them to fix, and they can action it. When they click done, you'll get an email as well that says that it has been ticked off as having been done for you to then jump back in and have a look at if you want to. Okay, let's stop again, stop sharing, jump back into my chat here and just make sure everyone's doing all right. So Jonathan Bailey is sharing document. Thanks, Jonathan. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I hope that's my document. All right. Can we set up a faculty drive, e.g. 7PDHPE, and have instructed staff to create Google Forms? Yep, that's fine. Individual class teachers need to then create a copy and post in their classes, as we found it. If we simply reuse the post, every single student's response across all classes was saved in the original. That is correct, yes. So you definitely need to make copies of the form for each teacher. Otherwise, you will have to scroll through all the students' work there. All right, Google Form. Forcing students to find originals, yes. Okay. So what's the question there? Any suggestions? All right. So one thing with forms, okay, so for those of you who are new to Google Forms, you can actually, so yes, get people to make copies of forms, but even if you don't want exactly the same form even, you can import questions from other forms. And so you can go through the forms and say, okay, I want this question out of the other form. And if you do my G Suite for Education course, and not the introduction one that's free, but the next one after that, it has in it how to do this with forms. I can very quickly show you that. But it might actually be better if I send you to a video, to be honest. But for example, this is I'm about to send this to you. Okay, so this is your feedback form. In here, if I want to import a question from somewhere else, you'll see here there's an import question function. I click that, and then it will just ask me which form do I want to select to import the questions from. I can select the form, and then once I've selected the form, I'll then get a list of all the questions that are in that form. I can then select it and import that question. I'm not going to do that because I don't want you to have to answer these questions. I do want you to answer these ones in a minute, but that's one thing you can do. The other thing, which I haven't tried, to be honest, but you might be able to try it, is to actually create the form from inside Classroom. Because I know when you create posts, so if I go to tests, when I create a normal post inside my classwork, so if I go here and just create an assignment of any kind, up here it says test, but I can click here and do it. And if you have more than two, you can actually, you can do it for all classes, or you can just select, for example, if I'm doing this across all my Year 7 classes, I can just select my 3 or 4 Year 7 classes that are going to get this post. And so one teacher can post exactly the same title, the same instructions. They can create that one video that all of them get, the one rubric that everyone gets. And that's a good way to keep consistency. The one thing I haven't tried, to be honest, but you could give it a go, is if you go here and create a quiz assignment. And so here, there's the form. If you create that form there, because this links to your markbook, so you see this grade importing, you should then be able to post across multiple classes at once, and the results from that form will then load into your Google Classroom, and that might be a good solution for you to do it that way. So to create the quiz from inside Classroom and select the classes it's going to apply to, and then particularly if that's a multiple choice type quiz, that'll be really easy. That'll just load in marks straight away, and then that's fine. And each teacher can see their students' marks. If, however, it's more open-ended, it should still work for you. You should still be able to go into your markbook and click on that student's entrance into that quiz to just go through and have a look at what they've done. So that's my recommendation for fixing that in terms of sharing stuff across multiple classes and making lots and lots of copies of forms. That might be a good solution for you. Let's stop sharing. I'll go back into my questions. Can you archive sections of your Markbook? I believe you can. Let's, again, if I click share screen, click share. All right, so if I go to my grades, and this doesn't have much in here, but I should be able to click these 3 buttons. So it's delete. It's not so much an archive, but a delete. So if you particularly wanted it archived where you wouldn't see it, but it would still exist, then no, but delete. But I've got to be honest with you, generally speaking in Google, when you delete something, it's archived. They don't actually delete a lot of stuff for you, but I can just, if I click delete here, grades and comments will also be deleted, and that's more what it's talking about, so you get rid of that. But once I've deleted it, yes, that's now just gone. So not so much archiving, but definitely deleting is possible. If you created something and didn't like it, you can just delete that. All right, stop sharing. We're coming towards the end. Can I send you an email regarding a PL course? Yeah, sure, not a problem in terms of providing my email address. So my email is just daniel@teacherspd.net. Just shoot me an email anytime you like, and I'll hopefully be able to get back to you pretty soon. All right, so the last thing I need from you guys particularly, in order to get your NESA accredited hours, I would love for you to just jump in. I'm going to share the link to that form that I just walked you through. Go there, where's my feedback form? There it is. So if you could just complete this form for me, it will ask you for your NESA number, and then I can give you your hours when I log in and provide you with your NESA accredited hours later. Fill in that form, make sure you enter your NESA number. I've noticed recently some people seem to add more, their NESA number is wrong. They keep adding a number that's a bit too long. So just check how long your actual NESA number is as you enter it. Again, if you need more training in G Suite, I do have that Introduction to G Suite course that is free. Please go back to that link that I shared earlier. In fact, I can just share it again with you if you like. Here's the one to register. If you want to do more training in Google Classroom, you can just go to this link, and that will allow you to get an extra 12.5 hours of training in G Suite for Education. Now, I want to thank you guys so much for coming and giving me an hour of your time. I really appreciate it. I would love for you to just make comments in that feedback form about anything that you like, anything you'd like further information on. Now, my next webinar, which happens on Wednesday, is essentially meant to be for me to answer the questions that you've had. Now, I've had a few emails come in around questions that people have for remote learning, and I would love to make sure that I'm answering your questions. So if you haven't already, you can chuck it in here in the chat right now if you want to. Just quickly chuck in there any of the questions that you might like me to answer on Wednesday that will help you. So if you want me to show you how to use Google Forms, or if you want me to show you anything else tech related, I have accredited the webinar particularly around ICT. You can ask other stuff as well. I do plan to talk a little bit about some things like menu boards and HyperDocs, which I think are fantastic tools that relate to Google specifically for how you might go about learning with your students as well. And that's essentially, yeah, I can talk to you about that on Wednesday. That's something that I want to make sure I do cover. But please, if you have any questions, do make sure you share them with me, and I will do my best to make sure that I have covered that for you on Wednesday. So please make sure you come back in 2 days' time. And thank you so much. At this point, if you are in that form and completing that form, that's when you'll get your hours. And I would like to thank you all very much for coming along. It's been great. I do love to share as much as I can. And again, make sure you get into all the free stuff that I'm giving out at the moment. I'm trying to give away as much as I can right now to support you guys in any way that I can. So thank you very much. If you are done and you've got your link, please just click your hang up button. I'll hang around here for a little bit longer, just as things get chucked into the chat for all those questions that people have, and I will make sure I have a look at it later. So in terms of your names, I really just need your number. I'll put your number in, and that will bring up the names. I have a list of names of the people who have registered for the webinars, and so if your name doesn't match that, I might send you an email or something. But just that number will be enough for me to make sure that I've entered you correctly. And yes, I can see all your names in the chat as well, which is another way that I can just check that everything is working and that people aren't giving me 6 numbers when they haven't actually attended. So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate it. It is free. I'll look at the 12.5-hour course that's free at the moment will probably be free for the next few weeks, to be honest, and possibly even longer than that. Once you enroll in it, it's free. You'll have access for 12 months. So don't worry too much. Like if you think you might do it later, just enroll now. You've got a whole year to get around to doing that.